All right. For those of you who just got done watching Yogi, great show by Yogi again. Uh, he's part of the great family that we have here. So tonight we are talking Vikings vintage, like we do every Wednesday night. We finally found a good time slot for this show. So if you noticed last week we did backup quarterbacks and the great seasons they did. We got a special one for you tonight. We have top 10 running backs in Vikings history.
Vikings, let's win this game. Score Vikings, honor in the name. Go get that first down, then get a touchdown. Rock 'em, sock 'em, fight, 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 fight. Go Vikings, run out the score. You'll hear us yell for more. V-I-K-I-N-G-S. Score Vikings, let's go.
So, Vikings, along with having great wide receivers, have also had some great running backs. Some had great talent and were only here for a couple of years, and some did not have the greatest talent, but they were a Viking for a while, so they were, and they actually had production, so they were great. So, for honorable mention, what do you think? I think this guy, I enjoyed watching him play. I don't know if you might think he might be an honorable mention, but I got two guys. I only played a couple years, but if he played today, he'd be much more valuable. In my mind, he's honorable mention, but I don't know if you feel the same way, Tony. Ampley.
If he was a starter, yeah. He was a backup to basically Terry Allen and Robert Smith.
Yeah.
He split time. He even split time with the Niners. I think he split time with Ricky Waters with the Niners. Yeah. So, but he had that skill set. He was perfect for one thing that people need to understand about a Bud Grant, Jerry Burns offense. If you played running back, you had to be a good receiver. You had to be able to catch the ball. Ampley could do that. So he would have fit in great with that style of offense. He played well for Denny, though, too. So and all the times that he did play, he had one negative play that I can remember, but most of the time it was positive. So I would put him up there.
He would definitely be a top running back in today's league, I think.
Yeah, because he could catch the ball.
Yeah.
He could be that running back that you could line him up out in the flats. He could be that slot. He could do that. Today he would have excelled in today's game.
Yeah, he was 95 through 96. Mm-hmm. So that is vintage, but not like vintage that we're used to.
Yeah, Denny wanted him. Denny signed him and kept him for a couple of years.
Yeah. So this guy, I'm gonna let you expunge on this guy.
Okay.
78 to 83. Ricky Young. Definitely honorable mention, if not top 10.
Well, I liked Ricky, but they traded one of my favorite offensive linemen for him. They traded Ed White to the Chargers for Ricky Young. Ricky got here in 78. The guy caught 88 passes in 78. Wasn't the best runner, but he was a hell of a receiver and an even better blocker. Much better blocker. But he had average speed. He wasn't exactly the fastest guy, but he was one of those veterans. He was a sure veteran. If you needed a big play, if you needed a block, if you needed a catch, Ricky was going to be the man to do it.
And as good as he was, his nephew was even better.
Yeah, that's the funny part. And if for those that don't know, his nephew was Sweetness, Walter Payton. and his other nephew played on the team with him at one time. Eddie Payton is a kick returner.
Yeah.
And he was also related to the Oilers linebacker, Robert Brazil. So there was a lot of most of his family was in the NFL, but yeah, Ricky was a steady, dependable veteran. Bud Grant loved him. He was one of Bud's favorite players. And matter of fact, Ricky has a lot of great things to say about Bud. Even when Bud passed, he had so many great things to say about Bud. But yeah, he was dependent. He was very good. I just, the only negative was how he got here because of Ed. They traded Ed White, but that was because what's his name, Mike Lynn. Ed held out the year before. They signed him, and he and I talked to Ed White about this. Mike Lynn told him right to his face he was going to retire a Viking. And he lied to him. And that still bothers Ed White to this day. But we did get Ricky out of the trade. So,
and he still holds the Vikings record.
Which record?
Most receptions by a running back in a season.
Yeah, 88. Yeah.
I don't know if that'll ever be broken.
I don't think that will ever be broken. I mean, if it was going to be broken, it could have been broken by Ted Brown. Ted Brown came close with what did he have? 83 one year? In 81? And I think that was probably the closest. But yeah, I mean, the guy almost had, and believe it or not, he had less than 800 yards receiving on 88 catches. Less than 800 yards. So yeah, I would throw him up there. Yeah. There's others you could throw up there too.
You got Leroy Hoard,
right?
You got Michael Bennett.
Yeah. I can even go back farther for honorable mentions. I mean, you've got, Clint Jones. You've got Oscar Reed.
Alfred
Anderson, Alan Rice. Hell, one guy you never hear us talk about, Rick Fenny. That guy was pretty good in the 80s. He had to retire because of a neck injury, but he was a pretty damn good running back in the 80s for the Vikings. So yeah, there's a bunch of guys that are honorable mention that you could put up there.
And by talent, there's one guy who probably wasn't be considered a top 10 running back, but talent-wise, he was. That would be Herschel Walker.
Yeah, he did. And I'll tell you what, when Herschel before he got here was a excellent running back. He was that quintessential running back, but the way, once he got here and the upheaval that it caused with the draft, with the trade and all that, it kind of shook up the locker room. And you had a lot of players. I know Tommy Kramer said it. We did not need him that year,
and especially for what they got, because he only ended up playing 42 games for Minnesota.
Yeah. Yep. And
the
funny thing,
all that they gave the Cowboys 3 championships, and we got Herschel Walker for 42 games.
Yep. And the funny thing about that was when Denny came back, when Denny got the job, Denny actually talked to him and wanted him to stay a Viking. Herschel wanted out.
Yeah,
he wanted out. So, but yeah, I mean, they didn't really know how to use him, and I think by the time they figured it out, it was too late. The damage had been done, but they gave up so much for him. It kind of set the franchise back a couple of years.
Because back then it was radio blotter or like a news blotter. It wasn't, it wasn't like it is today. We can go to the internet and get the news. He had to wait till like ESPN reported like on the bottom line, or like a sports channel breaking news. Well, when they first released it, they said Vikings got Herschel Walker. I was like, yes, because when they announced the trade, they don't announce the trade details right away. So
when they announced they announced the players that we gave up. Matter of fact, one of the guys that got traded, family secret, my sister was dating him, David Howard. That's how I found out about the trade.
Yeah.
My sister called me and told me they traded my boyfriend. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You know, and she's like, yeah, he's going to the Cowboys. I'm like, for who? And then she told me that it was for some Walker. That's what she told me. I'm like,
Oh, some guy named Walker.
yeah, she's like, it's Walker, some guy named Walker. She didn't really follow the teams.
Right.
I'm like, oh, Herschel. It's like, yeah, that's him. He's going to, and I'm like, just David. And then the news came out
Yeah.
that it was not only David, but Darren Nelson, Jesse Solomon, Isaac Holt, Alex Stewart, who was on IR, but he went, and then they gave up all the draft choices.
Yeah.
You know, and then Mike
the draft
Lynn,
choices was the killer.
yeah, and then Mike Lynn makes the announcement when they get Herschel here to press conference, and this is what doomed him. If Herschel Walker gets us to the Super Bowl, it was a great trade. If he doesn't, it wasn't a good trade. It wasn't a great trade.
It ended up not being a good trade.
Right. So yeah, that's how I heard about the Herschel Walker trade.
Yeah, we're not saying he's a top 10 talent maybe, but not top 10.
He was a good running back. I give him credit.
Yeah. And some people see this is where it gets tough because so for the top 10, do you do Chester Taylor? Do you there's a couple other ones here. Could you do Terry Allen or do you do Dave Osborne?
Definitely Dave Osborne. Dave Osborne was very dependable for years. He was like our star running back in an era where you had to run the ball. It was him and Bill Brown in the same backfield. So yeah, and Dave Brown, love Dave Brown. Dave Brown was a fan favorite here in the Twin Cities, a big fan favorite.
Gary, we explained this to you before. There's going to be pain on this show.
Yeah. Buckle up, Gary. It's a bumpy ride.
I mean, granted, nothing was as bad as the Super Bowl show that we did. That was painful. Nothing was as fun as the Love Boat show. So if you guys missed that, go back and when you go back to the channels, watch history. You can click on the Love Boat episode.
Right.
You won't be disappointed. Going through the okra patch.
Yep.
Never forget that. Well, we have a special guest. This man has a story. Since it was Veterans Week last week, we didn't get a chance to have him come on a story. But he does have a story that involves the Vikings with some veteran work. We would like to welcome to the stage Mr. Dave from First and School. How you doing,
Dave? What's up?
Hey, guys. You're talking about running backs that touch me. The Herschel Walker trade in particular.
I'm sorry. Do you need Alka-Seltzer?
What do you think he drinks?
Herschel, we thought, was the last missing piece
We did
to get us to the Super Bowl. And of course, Bernsey didn't use him like Herschel was meant to be.
Right.
Herschel was into calisthenics to keeping himself strong and whatever. And they wanted to get him in the weight room and do things like that. And they wanted to change the way he ran. And it just did not work.
No.
And
well,
then
even Tommy. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Well, then the Mike Lynn, the whole trade deal is, trading the players was fine, but it was if they were kept on the team. And
none of them were.
Cut every last one of them to get draft picks.
Except for Darren. Darren wanted to be traded. He said he would not play for the Cowboys. They traded him as soon as he said, I'm not playing. So they traded him to the Chargers. Yeah, they traded him to the Chargers. But like I said, my sister told me about it. And
it was heartbreaking over that time period. We saw Herschel on that first punt return or kick return, and he lost his shoe, and he went so far, and we're like, yes!
And it was against the Packers. Our hopes were just like, yeah, this is it. And just week after week after week,
mm-hmm.
it went downhill.
Yes, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Now the story I wanted to tell, and I've actually got two.
So the floor is yours, Dave. So
One was in 2012. I'm sitting in Aliyah Salim, Kuwait, awaiting a flight to go to Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. And the flight gets canceled. So I get to watch Adrian Peterson go for the record. And I'm sitting in the MWR, Morale and Welfare Center, and watching that game. And he gets up to that last, 6 yards, and we're like, go for it. And he gets pulled from the game. And it's just like, that was one of my favorite memories of all time, sitting there with all sorts of other fans as we're watching on TV. And then I had to catch, I think it was a C-130, and just anybody that's flown C-130s knows what that is. And before
my cousin's a flight engineer on a C-130.
Well, it's a good airplane. It's just slow and vibrates like crazy and is crowded. Anyways, but that was one story. But the other story that I wanted to tell TYA was back in 2010. I was up in Baghdad, Iraq. I was working as a support engineer for the computer system that the DOD had bought, the logistics command and control system. And I'm up there, and I sit in the 1st Armored Division Tactical Control Center, which is a big sort of theater type deal. Big screen in the front. We slope up, and we've got desks lined up, and we're controlling all of the battlefield. Well, and this is pure veterans, the USO was bringing on the Vikings cheerleaders. Hey, what could not be better than to see Vikings cheerleaders? Well, during this whole time, I was doing Loof's Locker Room, my website back in the day when I was talking Minnesota Vikings. Well, I started talking with the lead cheerleader on the trip. Real nice lady. Beautiful, right? Well, they get there, they work their way up through country, and they get to Victory Base in Baghdad. And then they come into the building, and they come to see us. And I'm talking with her via email, and I said, hey, you'll recognize me. Don't worry. I'm up there. I'm the 40-something-year-old fat guy with a vest and a Vikings hat. They walk in, the whole cheerleading squad walks in to the Tactical Operations Center, and they're looking up, and you've got young soldiers from 18 years old all the way up to the general who's probably my age in his 40s. And they turn around, and she looks up at me and goes, Dave! And I waved, and I come down, and we do all hugs. And I get to hug all these beautiful young Vikings cheerleaders. Everybody in the place is looking at me like, what the hell? What does he have? And I'm sitting there talking to her, and then I go on with her because she's leading the group. And we talk, and we go around, and that leads to other group settings I had a warrant officer 4 that got his picture taken with all the cheerleaders, and he was like, oh, thanks, Dave. But it just goes to show what the Vikings do for veterans. Now, in this case, it was the cheerleaders. They're not the only ones. Players have come out before. Jared Allen being a big one that supports veterans.
Yeah, Jared Allen came out all the time.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that brightened everybody's day. And it's your Minnesota Vikings that do that. Not every team does. And I just wanted to express in a story that I was alluding to TYA that you can't beat that. You got to love this organization for that. And whether it be the cheerleaders or a running back that I got to watch as I'm heading to Afghanistan, or, running backs that we watched the day I was up at Grand Forks when we traded for Herschel. Those things mean a lot to us in our lives. And this organization is great at that. And I just wanted to share that story with you all as we talk history with TYA and Tony. They're the best at it. And just enjoy that, hey, this team cares about us. We may not think so sometimes, but they do. And we obviously care about them. Thanks, guys.
Well,
You got it, Dave.
we can't tell you, how much we appreciate the service that you've done.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
I've told you that before.
It's nothing.
You know,
It's what
I know everybody, all military people are humble, but still, the reason we have the freedoms that we have to talk Vikings is because of the stuff that you do. That goes back to all these people who don't care if a team leaves because they don't want to pay for a new stadium. They don't want to do this. People don't realize how much professional sports teams bring to a city, whether it's helping kids get school supplies, if visiting troops like in a hospital, visiting kids at a children's hospital, all that type of all sports do it. I don't think the impact is more than just watching them on Sundays or just watching them during the week for baseball or basketball. The impact that they have in the community is, to me, is far greater than what than watching them on Sundays. And the Vikings, they time and time again are known in the NFL as being one of the top teams for doing the community work. So
The Vikings are one of the top teams in the NFL.
Yeah, especially since the Wilfs took over.
Yeah,
Yes.
and big time since the Wilfs.
Yeah, so that actually makes me more prouder, if that's even a word, to be a Vikings fan with the community stuff that they do, along with their performance on the field, which we all know has been the same since.
Oh, they're all over. They're all over.
Yeah.
They're all over town here in the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
Everywhere you look, there's the Norseman logo, and I'm not that far from the stadium, so that whole area, it's all Vikings.
Yeah. Dave, it's up to you. You can stay for the whole show, or you.
Nah, Dave's got to stay. He can't go anywhere. Too bad. He already logged in. He's stuck here.
Off, but all right, I'll stay.
Yeah, he's staying.
You're talking about some of the 80s, which was my missing decade of Viking fandom.
Well,
don't worry. I'll clue you in.
Yeah. So I put this guy at 9. You can disagree with me if you want. He was only here, from 06 to 09. He probably would have been here longer if they didn't draft the guy that Dave was just talking about. Chester Taylor.
I like Chester.
I thought he brought a lot to the team when they brought him in.
I like Chester. He's got two of the longest runs in team history for touchdowns. I liked him. What happened was they drafted AP, and they were supposed to have that thunder and lightning type of deal. They didn't have it, and Childress went strictly with AP. Which Chester was a good back. He was good with he was with the Ravens first, wasn't he?
I believe so. Yeah, he was with the Ravens.
Right.
Yeah,
he was a good back. I like Chester. I have nothing negative to say.
They got him from the Ravens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he played 61 games, started 24 of them. Those are probably more than likely before Adrian got here. He had 27 100 yards, 18 touchdowns. He also had 160 catches for 1,300 yards.
Yeah, he could also catch. He was a starter because, especially AP's rookie year, he suffered injuries, and he had fumbleitis his rookie year too. So they stayed with Chester, who was reliable. He was steady and reliable.
I want to correct something real quick. Frozen, I was not 40 in 1990. I was in my 40s in the 2010s. I was born in 63, so that dates me. I'm 60 years old. I'd already...
Well, hey, at least I'm younger than you there, brother. I'm 66. I was born in 66, so...
I was working for the DOD when I was up in Iraq and Afghanistan.
I've never felt so young.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with it, right, Tony?
No, hey,
exactly. At least we're here
like a wine
to talk about it. We're here to say, "Yep, I'm old. I'm gonna stay here. You guys just got to deal with it.
When I turned 60 back in October, I dreaded 50. 50 was the worst, right? And 40 was about the time that things started to hurt real bad. But and I stopped playing flag football and coaching. I didn't stop coaching, but I stopped playing flag football in Amarillo at 42. But that was it. And after that, I mean, everything starts to ache and hurt and all that sort of stuff. But,
yeah, it catches up with you.
Well, remember, it's not getting down. It's getting back up.
It's getting back up that hurts so much.
Well, and when you do get up and you hear snap, crackle, pop, and it's not cereal, then,
Yeah, when the knee wants to go and lock up and it goes, it's pain.
Plus, there's no air down there.
When you literally have to fight with yourself to be like, okay, I got to get up. I got to get up. No, I don't have to get up. I can always get up in another 5. No, I got to get. When you're like that, yeah.
I can roll off the bed rather than slide off the bed. It's exactly what it is.
And I've got those back problems where there will be days where I can't get out of bed. Then when I finally do, and I slowly get up, that damn pop, you can hear it when it cracks. It's like, oh, Father Time, I hate your ass.
Undefeated. Father Time's undefeated.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and playing football like we did puts abuse on the body.
Yeah.
And then my job in the military put abuse on the body. And then afterwards, working for the military, put abuse on the body. And it just compounds the older you get. And that's
it's like, like you had a lot of kickers. They would play until like 20 years and stuff. They've been in the league 17 years. And I want to just yell at the screen, who's hitting them?
Maybe that's why Father Revase it last. Maybe that's why Father Revase it last very long, because he was too busy hitting other people.
Yeah, exactly. That did end his career too. He hit that guy. He was never the same after that. He never was. But I mean, like somebody like Jim Marshall, 20 years in the trenches in that era of football, and he played every game. He didn't miss a game.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, you know what? He should be in the Hall of Fame just for that. He played in a real era of football. So, but yeah, it's, as the fact that we're here to talk about getting older is a blessing in itself.
Yes, it is. Without a doubt. And the fact that we're here still rooting for our team because they give us hope is a bigger one.
They give us hope and indigestion all at the same time.
How has this team not killed us yet? That's what I'm.
Hey,
you know what? I'm actually not that old. This gray hair is from years of Viking football.
Yeah. So we can agree that Dave Osborne will be number 9.
Oh, hell, I have actually Dave Osborne or Chester Taylor?
Chester Taylor at 10.
Chester Taylor's 10, so Dave Osborne's 9?
I put Ozzy.
I got Ozzy like in my higher. I got Ozzy in my top 5.
Okay. Okay, so
yeah, I got Ozzy was, and Dave, you probably agree with me here. He was at
okay, so Terry Allen at 9?
Yeah, Terry Allen at 9. Yeah. And
I grew up with Osborne.
I grew up with Osborne too. Number 40. I mean, I wore number 41 as a kid until I started watching the defense, and then I switched that to 88. But Dave Osborne was one of my favorite players. Very likable guy. Very likable.
The original Super Dave.
Yeah, Super Dave from Candu, North Dakota. And I did meet him and Bill Brown one time. I might have told the story. I don't know. I met them in an autograph session in the 90s.
Yep.
And we were just shooting the breeze. Well, then I had to ask him, okay, Dave, who was meaner and nastier, Dick Butkus or Ray Nitschke? And Dave Osborne said, well, I got to go with Butkus because I played against him longer. But Nitschke wasn't far behind. They both were intense players. He said that. So I asked Bill Brown the same question. Bill's like, oh, hell, they were both a couple of mean SOBs. I couldn't stand either one of them.
We'll get the the 2 Browns later on this list. But so Terry Allen, he played 47 games at 38 starts, 2,700 yards rushing yards, 23 touchdowns. he also had 72 catches, which I don't remember him catching the ball that much, but I guess he did, and 3 receiving touchdowns. So
Yeah, and he missed a couple of years with a knee injury.
yeah,
His rookie year was a wash because of a knee injury, and then he played in 91, 92, and then he tore up his other knee in 93.
yeah, because when Darren Nelson left and Herschel Walker signed with the Eagles after he left Minnesota, he became the de facto starter.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and his separation from the Vikings was not a pleasant one.
No, that was kind of nasty.
So
It was.
Because I remember the interview on ESPN. I think it was Andrea Kramer. They talked when he was fine with because after he left Minnesota, he went to Washington.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
they
was she
said,
like 18 back then?
when they asked him, she asked him a question. She's like, "So when you become a free agent, there's 30 teams you can sign with." He goes, "No, 29."
Yeah, he wasn't going to.
I will never sign with Minnesota ever again. So I'm like, oh, I said, well, his separation must not have been a pleasant one.
Well, because at that time, you got to remember Denny Green, when he got his first draft choice in 93, he picked Robert Smith.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert Smith looked good his rookie year till he tore up his knee. So 95 rolls around. He was gonna start Robert Smith, but Robert Smith held out in 95. So Robert Smith didn't play he missed all the preseason. He didn't play until the opener in Chicago. And then guess what? He got hurt. What was it? The Bears game. He got hurt. I think it was I don't know if it was a Monday night game. I don't think so, but he got hurt there and he was out. And then he comes back the next year and gets hurt again and is out. So he spent like 3 out of his first 4 years IR with knee injuries. So, but Denny wanted to play him. That was Denny's guy.
And there's something to be said about players that hold out versus players that play in the preseason and how healthy they are. It's that buildup that I think makes players healthier and last longer. I know the NFL Players Association wants to make our preseason and training camp as safe as possible, and so they don't play anybody.
Yeah.
But it's a detriment. It's almost a detriment to some of the players because you see in week 1 and week 2 when they go out with injuries, and it's just because they haven't ramped up.
No, they're not in game. They're not in game. They're not game ready.
Right. And that was the same case back then.
Well,
if you held out, you weren't ready.
And some teams, and Bud wasn't that way, but a lot of teams had really rigorous training camps. So when the season did go, they really were beat to death. Bud was one of those camps where Bud didn't like training camp either. So he's not going to put the players through anything that he wouldn't. So with Denny's camps, I never heard of them being bad or rough. When Corey passed away, then that was just unfortunately a really unfortunate thing. But I never heard of him having a really physical camp.
Zimmer did have physical
camps. But you had those. You never heard. The Vikings were always the last team to have training camp. So if a player is going to hold out, you're kind of like, why? You're not going to be there very long. So what are you holding out for? And at that time when Robert held out, it was a gang of 10 that was running the team. Not only did Robert hold out, but then Derek Alexander, our top draft choice, held out. And who could we have drafted that year? Warren Sapp, who probably would have held out.
But he was too busy smoking the weed. So
I don't care. He would have looked good. He would have looked good on that line with John Randall. I'm sorry.
I know. I'm just saying.
I would have been his
touch players that smoked weed back then.
Hell, I would have been.
Care.
Now we don't care. I'd have been his personal dealer. I made sure he was high every game if that was the case. But
the story's probably going to come out at one time that the Bucs are the ones who put that story out.
Could have been.
It had to be. To
get him to drop.
Yeah.
To get him to drop.
Yeah.
And you see who drafted him? Tony Dungy.
Yeah.
And he built his defense around that. So, but Robert ended everything on a high note. One of the best backs in the league, especially in 2000. He led the league in rushing, and then he was going to get paid that off season, and he retires.
Yeah, I have the story to where, I mean, we'll get into it later because he's later on this list. I could tell that story later.
Yeah.
All right. So would you put Darren Nelson next? Not because he probably wasn't as great, but he had longevity. I mean, he played 129 games, 68 starts, 4,200 rushing yards, 18 touchdowns. He had 251 catches for 2,200 yards and 5 touchdowns. So, and where he did only technically have, 25 touchdowns, 23 touchdowns for Minnesota, his career. It was more of I don't think he was the goal line back when he played, so that's probably why he didn't get as many touchdowns.
He was also, I got to explain something later when it comes to the Vikings and the whole running back thing and how they label him. Darren was okay. Let's just give the story about Darren Nelson. We drafted Darren the first draft choice off the board as a running back in '82. Now we took him ahead of Marcus Allen, Walter Abercrombie, Gerald Riggs. I think there was a couple of others in there, but we took him first. And the first thing out of Darren's mouth is Minnesota. I can't play in Minnesota. I can't disco to country music. That's what he said in the newspaper. So you knew right then and there he did not want to come to Minnesota. He did not. And guess what? He held out. But he did get there. He missed like 3 days. He came in and he showed flashes of what he could do, especially receiving the ball. He was a great receiver. He could catch. So he has the honor of being the first rookie to ever start for a Bud Grant team. He was the first one in 1982. Now remember, Chuck Foreman didn't start either. Neither did Alan Page. Darren Nelson was the first rookie to start for Bud Grant in '82.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was at that time. He was the first. But
I don't remember another thing I didn't know. I didn't realize Minnesota was doing country music back then.
Well, you know what Bud said? He's like, country? I'll have him know this is the polka capital of the world. That's what Bud said. He said this is the polka capital of the world. I read that. I'm like, oh God, we're doomed.
Actually, Tony has a story on that.
Oh God. Okay. Here's the pain that comes with being a Viking fan.
Mm-hmm.
Darren,
I'm tired of hearing the excuses. The pass wasn't on target.
No, the pass hit him in his hands, so he should have caught it. But then they're also saying the rumor is that Anthony Carter ran the wrong route. I'm like, who was the ball intended for? Because it went right to Nelson. He threw it right to Nelson at the goal line, and Nelson just dropped it. He dropped it, plain and simple.
And they had a really good chance that year.
They were 6 yards away from going into overtime.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was they were about to beat the Redskins. And it was the Redskins back then, people.
Yeah, it was the Redskins.
Mm-hmm. And all he had to do was catch it and fall backwards.
Yep.
And we had gone to overtime.
And we would have gone into overtime. But he dropped the ball. By the way, he held out after that game. He held out in '88. And he didn't sign until the first game of the year, but he looked terrible. The '88, he had a really bad year. The Vikings couldn't run the ball at all. And he was part of the Walker trade in '89. But
then he came back to play his final 2 years.
Played his final 2 years, and he was primarily a kick returner.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he had his moments. I mean, he had flashes where he looked like he was going to be the real deal. But he just, between the holdouts is what got him. That's probably what his biggest downfall was.
Another reason I brought this comment up is because he is my favorite Viking of all time in his profile pic.
Oh, yeah, Joey Browner. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
of course, Zoe leaves, and I start talking about 1982, whatever, dude.
And Zoe has no clue.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So, what Brown did you want to talk about, Ted or?
Let's talk about Ted first.
Okay. So, 104 games, 4,500 yards, 40 touchdowns,
Mhm.
339 catches, 2,800 yards, and 13 touchdowns.
Okay.
So that's 53 total. He lost his job mainly. Well, they say injuries, but it was the spin doctor is the main reason why he lost his
Well,
job.
I mean, here's the thing. We drafted him in 79, number one, as the heir apparent to Chuck Foreman. Chuck had a ton of injuries in 78. You could tell he lost a step.
Yeah.
And years later, Bud even says we overdid it with Chuck. We used him too much.
Yeah.
But now here's where I have to give a deference. Everybody's kind of wondering what position was Chuck Foreman, Ted Brown, blah, blah, blah. Technically, they were labeled running backs. But in the scheme of football, they were both fullbacks. Chuck was a fullback. He even said it. Chuck was like, I was labeled as a running back, but technically I was a fullback. Ted Brown was also a fullback.
Yeah, but you got to remember, back in those days, a fullback back then is not what it
is now.
Ham is today.
No.
It's a totally different style of
play.
playing.
Your great fullbacks, if you think about it, not only Chuck was a fullback, but so was Franco Harris.
Yeah.
So was Larry Zonka.
Mm-hmm. Zonka was great at it.
Yeah, Zonka and Mark Van Egan with the Raiders.
Oh, Riggins.
Riggins, who was almost a Viking, by the way.
Yep.
He was almost a Viking. But they were all fullbacks. But the way that the NFL was, your fullbacks were big parts of the offense, not just these blocking dudes that never touch the ball, except if you're Kyle Jissick down at the goal line and they give you the ball. No, these guys were focal points of the offense. And Ted Brown became that. Matter of fact, his lead blocker, that's why I gave Ricky Young a bunch of credit. The one opening up the holes for Teddy was Ricky. So I was kind of like, well, wait a minute. Wouldn't Ricky technically be the fullback then? But no, it was the Vikings had it to where that's why they called them running backs, just plain old running backs. But Ted was good and he could catch. I said he had 83 catches in 1981. He ran for 900 yards in 1980, 912 yards as a matter of fact. He gained 1,000 in 81. 82 was a strike short year, but he looked really good in that year. And then 83 came around and he was injured. He got hurt. But also what happened in 83 was he was the first player in Viking history, first player in Bud Grant's history as a head coach to ever be suspended by Bud Grant. Bud suspended him for a game. Bud had been a coach for 27 years. He had never suspended a player. Never.
Yeah.
But
he's still fourth all time.
Yeah.
Touchdowns for Vikings.
Yeah, down at the goal line, Teddy was going to get you. He was going to get that yard. He was going to get the yard. He was dependable. There was really nothing wrong with him. Injuries. He got older, and he was never the fastest guy. But I guess he was deceivingly fast because he didn't look fast on my TV. Let's just be honest. He did not look fast. But yeah, he was good. I like Ted Brown. Yeah, he was a good back.
That's because the broadcast waves were slower back then, Tony.
Oh, that whole analog thing?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my God.
It was like 10 frames a second, something like that.
Yeah, because he looked like he was running like 15 frames. It was slow. I mean, I'm like, I kind of was looking at the TV. I'm like, why is nobody catching him?
Exactly.
Because they're running at 9 frames a second.
Yeah, I'm like, he literally broke loose for 55 yards against the Bears in 80. And I swear that had to be the slowest 55-yard TD run I've ever seen in my life. He did not look fast. I'm like, why are they not catching him? I mean, yeah, score, but why are they not catching him?
You should have seen my interception in high school. You want to talk about slow. I thought my feet were in concrete.
Oh, my
God.
God.
Anyways, yes, back in the day. Anyways.
All right, so would you guys do Bill Brown? Because we're getting like around 5, 6 around that.
So we did Ted.
Now.
Boom Boom. Yes.
Boom Boom he's a legend in Minnesota.
Yes, and should be.
He should be. Boom Boom is a legend in Minnesota.
fifth. He has the fifth most rushing yards.
Mm-hmm.
52 touchdowns. 48 was his long. So back then they didn't really. I don't think they ran for a lot of yards like they do nowadays. With
The
the
game was different.
yeah,
Yeah,
If
the
you
game was
could,
different.
if you could push and get 3 yards a carry, you're going to run it 4 times in a row. That's
Yeah.
a first down. That's the
Yeah.
way that worked.
Yeah, if your running game was on that day, you're getting 3, 4. Like on first down, you're getting 3 or 4. That's why, hell, what Greasy didn't even throw the damn ball in Super Bowl 8 against the Vikings because he was running it.
Mm-hmm.
and the thing about it that made Boom Boom good was that he was good when the Vikings weren't.
He was an All-Pro.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the
he was an
Vikings weren't very
All-Pro.
good their first 3 years.
Mm-mm.
So
He got there in '62, which, by the way, the Hall of Fame coach that wishes he had never let Bill Brown go was George Halas.
yeah,
Bill was with the Bears in '61. And he regretted till he said, if there was one player I wish I had never let go of, it was Bill Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Was that part of the expansion draft?
No, Bill came in '62.
Okay.
They just cut it.
yeah. In '64, he had 866 yards and 7 touchdowns, with 48 catches for 903 yards and 9 touchdowns.
Yeah,
So back in '64, that was pretty damn good. In '64,
the Vikings, the starting backfield for the West in the Pro Bowl was Tarkenton, Brown, and Tommy Mason.
Damn.
That was the starting backfield for the West. They all played in the Pro Bowl.
and Tommy Mason should, I don't think he's not top 10, but he should.
No,
go
Tommy's
down.
knees did him in.
But he should go down that he was the first ever Vikings draft pick.
Yep.
And so he does have a place in Vikings history.
Well, and Tommy played for years after he left the Vikings. He went to the Rams.
Yeah.
And then he was there, but then when George Allen left and went to the Redskins, he brought Tommy Mason with him. So Tommy actually
That was the
retired.
whole year. The old gang, is that what they were called?
Yeah, the Over the Hill gang, because
Yeah.
he brought half of that LA team with him to Washington. Which made him,
Jurgensen was their quarterback. He was like 50 or something like
yeah,
that.
he was up there. He was up there. But yeah, Bill Brown was just a legend. I mean, he finished his career on special teams. He said, well, why wouldn't I want to take shots at the guys that have been taking shots at me all damn day? Payback is, but he was ultra competitive. He was captain of the special teams. He was, matter of fact, the last captain of special teams before Bud gave it to Keith Norton in '83. But for like 6 or 7 years, there was no special teams captain. He was still active in the Twin Cities stuff up until he couldn't be, and he's no longer with us. But yeah, he was that whole Viking lore. When you think of those Viking teams, and you see number 30, that's like epic Viking lore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Him and Osborne, and Cap in the same backfield. Those are legends.
Mason played 70 games, 3,200 yards, 28 touchdowns, 11 receiving touchdowns, 3 Pro Bowls, and he was a first-team All-Pro selection. And of course, he was, like I said, the first pick. But it says the tandem of Bill Brown and Mason helped the Vikings have one of the top rushing offenses in the league for multiple seasons. Unfortunately, Minnesota's success on the ground didn't translate to more wins often than not, and they missed the playoffs each of Mason's first 6 years with the franchise.
And that part of that is because of, I think, Van Brocklin. I think Van Brocklin gets the blame for some of it.
Yeah, because the whole quarterback situation,
Mm-hmm.
that didn't help either. We talked about that earlier with the backup quarterbacks last week. So, okay, so that leaves about 2, 3. This list has got Dalvin Cook in front of Robert Smith. How would you guys have that?
No. No, I got Robert Smith in my top 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got Robert Smith is in my top 3. Dalvin Cook, for this era of football, you can't. They need to really like divvy up these eras, because running the ball now is not what it was even in the 2000s.
Yeah, because Dalvin Cook is third all-time rushing.
Right.
Right.
With just under 6,000 yards.
Yep.
Yeah, 59.93.
Yeah, and that's, to me, I mean, yeah, sure, but
do I think he's the third best running back on the Vikings ever?
No.
He's not even close.
Mm-mm.
He's not even close.
So,
Matter of fact, I've actually got some of the older guys ahead of him because of their complete game and what they could do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard to say. We don't know what Dalvin could have did in a passing game if KOC had used him, or if Zimmer had used him more. But
I mean,
it is what it is.
It is a top 10 list, but it's not like this is number 10, this is number 9. This is kind of like the consensus of the top 10 running backs.
Where'd you get that list? Wikipedia?
No, I got a couple of them. I'm from the Viking age, the same one we used to back up quarterbacks for. I also got Pro Football Reference.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a couple of lists. And these are the guys that we're mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also Wikipedia, and they're kind of all the guys that we're talking about. They're all consensus top 10. They're not 1 through 10. They're just, these are the guys they're considering top 10.
Guys that are in there? Okay.
Yeah. I'm just kind
would Dalvin Cook be top 10? Yes.
Yeah, he'd be top 10.
Yeah. Well, somebody has number 3.
Well, Pro Football Reference.
Pro Football Reference will, because their records only go back so far, and plus they're a younger generation that's doing it, so they're going by what they have seen, and they do it by AV, their adjusted value, and that goes total number of games and how many scores, and it doesn't adjust for era. Right.
Played. It's only their formula against what they do.
Yeah, because he's only played 73 games,
and
he has that many yards, so maybe that's why they have him that high up.
Yeah, he averaged pretty high.
You know what, though? I got to be honest with you. I don't think, now that I think about it, I don't think Chuck Foreman played in that many games as a Viking.
Foreman played 93.
Yeah, Foreman played 93 games.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then Robert Smith is at 98. And there's a couple guys like Bill Brown was 180.
Bill Brown was here 13 years.
Right.
And even when he was technically a backup, he would still have 100-yard rushing games. I mean, I remember watching him in 73 where he ran for 102 yards on the Lions. Him and Dave Osborne ran for 79. Why? Because Chuck Foreman was hurt. And so was Oscar Reed. So the only running backs we had running that day were literally the 1965 backfield of Tarkington, Brown, and Osborne in 73.
Well, you got to remember back then, seasons were only 14 games long.
Yeah.
And putting up those types of numbers is remarkable for a position that takes such a beating.
But also, here's a big difference, and remember this, Dave. Those preseason games, they played like 6 preseason games. And the starters played a majority of those games.
Yep.
The rookies never saw the field. Yeah, the rookies never saw the field.
It was to get them into playing shape back then.
Yeah, because it's not like it is nowadays. They didn't make enough money back then.
Well, also now
as their only job, so they actually have to work in the off season.
What also now, so much with management, even with big name players, they don't want them taking a chance of getting hurt in a meaningless preseason game, so they're going to cover them. But I always say, whether it's preseason, regular season, postseason, if you're going to get hurt, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah,
and you'd rather be built up to playing shape,
right,
than coming in cold, because you're more likely to get hurt being cold than being built up.
Exactly.
Do you think? Sorry, my back is itching. Do you think with starters not playing in the preseason is the reason why injuries are up?
It could be the injuries are up, and it could be the fields. But I think a lot of these players just aren't in game shape.
Because
Right.
pretty much back in the 60s, it was all grass fields, pretty much, right?
Yeah, I mean, you still
Yeah,
had your
grass and dirt.
injuries. You still
Yeah.
got your injuries, but I mean, when it came time to play, these guys were actually they were war ready, as they say.
Mhm.
Now
Yeah.
these guys are just their athleticism is what what they
Yeah.
live on.
You didn't get turf until the Astrodome.
Yeah,
And the
Because they couldn't grow
Astrodome was
grass.
the first to do that.
yeah. They tried to grow grass in there and it didn't work. That's why
Yeah.
they went
Well,
to the carpet.
And there's a story about that. I lived in Houston and I remember the story. The Astrodome, when we looked at the pictures of it now, I mean, I think it still actually exists, but they
It's
don't
still
play
up.
games in them.
No,
Yes.
it's
When you look at it, you
historical
see
landmark.
the white glass panels. When they originally built it, those were clear glass.
They were expecting sunlight to come through.
Yeah.
And they fully expected sunlight to come in and grow the grass, and it worked. The problem they had, because Houston happens to be very humid,
Mhm.
was the air conditioners blowing, because they had massive air conditioners, just like the Metrodome.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody remembers walking out of the Metrodome and you'd get pushed out the doors. Astrodome was similar. They had big overpressure and the air conditioners going. It would, with the sunlight coming in and the humidity in the air, it would condense and form a microclimate inside the dome.
That's
And
what
it would
happened.
actually rain. And it would be dripping and it would be raining and there would be clouds. Well, the whole idea of playing indoors is that you're out of the weather. Well, you just brought the weather indoors. And it didn't work. And they were worried about things corroding and stuff because water dripping on electrical speakers and lights and stuff isn't conducive to a safe environment. So they ended up going, all right, we'll paint it white. Well, white didn't let enough light in to grow grass. So they had to come up with a replacement. They came up with AstroTurf. The original AstroTurf, which is about half an inch high,
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
and we called it green carpet. And it was just green plastic leaf sort of deals weaved together and shaved down, and it looks like artificial putting green grass. That's what AstroTurf was.
So those AstroTurf burns. Oh God.
And
they
they would
sucked.
lay down about a half-inch rubber mat over the concrete, because the floor is concrete. And then they would lay this AstroTurf down, and that's what we played on. We came out with cleats. We went from the spike cleat that Tony and I used to wear, right, whether it be 7 or 9 or 12 or whatever it was, to a little knobby sort of deal.
Little rubber knobbies.
Yeah. And now some people wore basketball shoes back then. I wore knobbies because I mostly played on grass or dirt or turf, but every once in a while we'd play on a turf game. And that's what they used. And they played on that for years.
Yeah.
And they called it, green concrete for
pretty
better
much what it
terms,
was.
but it's playing, like that. And we didn't have near the injuries that we do today. But part of that was the size of players. Players have gotten bigger.
They were kind of, players, I mean, even up to when we played, they were kind of lumbery. The big guys were lumbery. They weren't these well-toned machines that could, a 320-pound guy could run a 4.40.
Right. Those didn't exist.
Those didn't exist. If you ran 4.40, if you were that big running a 4.40, you were not on the line. You were in the backfield.
That's why Marion Bailey. That's why the Cleveland guy,
Marion Motley.
Marion Motley, yeah.
He was a big dude. He was a big dude, but that was in the 50s.
Yeah.
And then in the 80s they had Christian Okoye, Earl Campbell. Was probably
he was
just the beast. And
didn't he have like 23-inch thighs or something?
32-inch
32-inch thighs. Also, and with the thigh pads.
Mhm.
You know,
It was just ginormous.
yeah. And once he got a full head of steam, I mean, good luck
You weren't
stopping him.
stopping. But TYA, you talked about rug burns.
Yes.
And
yes.
we'd get those playing on that surface.
Yeah.
That's why you wanted to be padded up all the way up.
They used to wear like
Forearms,
those,
elbows, knees.
those
The
like,
more
sleeve
padding,
things.
the better.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The more padding, the better. I tore my Achilles at the Metrodome. So, you know, and that was a new school carpet with a little bit of cushion.
Right.
But I'm like, ugh. It's like I'm like, yeah, can I just blow this son of a bitch up?
Well, you probably got your popcorn when they did blow it up.
When they said I wanted to press the button, I was like, who do I talk to press the button on this place?
So with Zimmer being fired, I guess the good thing is that Dalvin Cook wasn't brought back.
Yes.
He made way too much money for the running back position because he was too injury prone.
Well, that was another case where the Vikings kicked the can down the road as far as money, because I think they were still on the hook for some of his money when he left.
Right. He was washed. They used and abused him. They ran him till he was dry.
Yeah.
And
The
he's
Jets
still
are finding
dry
that out.
with the Jets.
Yeah, which I'm surprised he was not cut by the Jets. I'm surprised it was Carter.
Well, it's funny. He goes, I want more carries. They go, okay. They gave him 2. I mean, technically, it's more carries.
It is more carries. I mean, you know, you didn't say how many more.
Their starter is so good that, it's,
Now, can you imagine if the Jets had Rodgers? I hate to say it.
Well, they wouldn't be struggling like they are.
No. Well, when you got the MILF Hunter as your starting quarterback, I mean, the guy's more interested in banging somebody's mom than actually scoring a touchdown.
Yeah, but you gotta give him his kudos for that.
I mean, I remember.
But he's got his priorities right.
I remember a story coming about him. It was like, yeah, when he comes to your house, you don't need to hide your sisters. You need to hide your mom.
Yeah, that was a story. I heard that. I'm like, go on, dude. You get yourself. Go ahead.
Okay, so I guess we could talk about Robert Smith next. Story about Robert Smith. He had 98 games, started 72, 6,800 yards, 32 rushing touchdowns, 178 catches, 6 receiving touchdowns. You would have thought he would have more catches. I
thought he had more receiving touchdowns.
If he played nowadays, he'd probably be more important than when he played. Like you said, he held out. Also, the story about him in college where he quit the team because the coach told him that he needs to concentrate more on football than his studies. Well, Robert Smith he's as
smart as he's one of those just really smart guys.
Yeah. So, but they realized
in the medical field. That's what he loves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And because he said, and I got his jersey for Christmas the year 2000. So I didn't get I never got to wear his jersey to a game with him actually playing because he retired that year.
Well, he was also a track guy too at Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember the comment he said, and I thought he was going to play at least a couple more years. I thought he'd get his big payday. He signed like a 2-year contract, I think, quit. But I remember an interview with him. He said that he did not want to have the George Foreman effect. And the interview was like, what do you mean about the George Foreman effect? He's like, well, anytime we have a Vikings get together and all the old players come back, you see Chuck Foreman. That man can barely walk. He's like, I don't want to be like that when I get older. I want to be able to still function. And so that's the main reason why he left. And he knew he was smart enough. He knew that he was going to make money when he retired anyway. So it wasn't like it was a money thing.
Well, and the worst, actually, Chuck wasn't the worst. The worst was Bill Brown.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you would see Bill come to those functions. And Bill, I mean, he had knee surgery, hip surgery. He was in a wheelchair up and, before he passed away. And then dementia kicked in. So you saw these old guys and you're kind of like, God, as much as I want the money, I don't want to be like him. You know? Yeah. And it is a wake up. And he had already had the major knee injuries. So who's to say he gets his big contract? And none of the money was guaranteed back then. Who's to say he doesn't tear up his knee somewhere else? Plus, he's got to learn the playbook and all the other. He was probably tired of just the whole thing of football.
Yeah,
right. And he wanted to go do his medical thing.
Right, and and so he ends up, he did his medical, but he can also do sportscasting.
Yes,
Yeah.
he did that too. And
So
was
he
very
did
good
that
at it.
too. Yeah. So it's like he had options outside of football. He was lucky. There's some guys that get out of football, they don't have it. But Robert was smart enough, and he was lucky enough that he could do something after football. But I can understand where, and we love the sport. Those of us that have played it, we played it for the love of the sport. We play as long as we could. But some guys are like, you know what? I love the sport, but I'm not gonna put my body through it.
Yeah.
You gotta walk away eventually.
And he did struggle his first couple of years. But then in '97 is when he had 1,200 yards rushing, 37 catches for 197 yards and 7 total touchdowns that year.
His first full year.
Yeah, and then
healthy.
the next 3 years, from '98 to 2000, he's pretty much the main reason. Him and Moss, with him, Moss, Chris Carter, Jake Reed,
Jimmy Kleinsaucer.
Jimmy Kleinsaucer. Didn't really matter who the quarterback was.
Yeah, they proved that.
They went to 2 NFC championship games in those 98.
Oh, by the way, we kind of got to blame him for '98 also, because he had that long run and then he ran out of bounds.
They made a business decision.
Yeah.
He ran out of bounds.
Now, what I liked about Robert Smith is his running style was so different.
Yeah.
He had those long strides.
The long strides, and he seemed to glide. It wasn't a power game whatsoever. It was an efficiency game. I'm going to take these long strides and slip through this hole and then step on it. Right. And that's the way he ran. And it was actually a joy to see.
And he was a track guy. So he knew the long strides is kind of that track. And I think it was a high jumper too.
Right.
So the long strides helped him, which I think threw off a lot of defenders, because you expect choppy chops when they get to the hole.
Expect power through.
Those guys.
And it was not that.
It was not him. That was not him.
Those guys who move their legs fast, that look like they're running fast, but they're really not. He was one of those. He was one of those cats who looked like he was running slow, but he was
flying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
he was another one that's kind of like, okay, he doesn't look fast on TV, but I guess he is, because nobody's catching his ass.
Yeah.
But, so it's kind of like, you know what? As long as he scores, I don't care what he looks like. Just get in the end zone.
Well, Randy Moss was much the same way, but you expected it. Randy Moss was taller.
Yeah.
And you saw those long strides, and you're thinking, well, he ain't going anywhere. He was blowing by people.
Yeah. Those long legs would just.
Smith was doing the same thing.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and I think Randy was a basketball guy, but he had that long stride also, especially when he went up for the ball. Once he went up for the ball, he comes down with it. He's going to make some moves. And he would make these moves, and you just be like, did he just drop due to his knees?
Language alert. We got JJ in here.
Oh, hey, JJ.
Hey, it's little JJ. Growing his channel like crazy. And I want him to grow it even more. Let's get him to 1,000. If those that don't know little JJ, I call him little JJ because he's 14 now, and will be, when we're here 10 years older, JJ's going to be calling games for the Vikings, or he's going to be a Vikings analyst, or
Vikings Network something.
Yeah, he's got talent beyond his years, and he is something special. So if you want to see some good Vikings content, subscribe to JJ Vikings, the podcast.
And I hit 25 today, so I'm happy about that. But I just started my channel like a month ago, so that's not too bad for a month.
Takes a while to build up, brother. Takes a while to build up. You keep plugging.
Yeah. Oh, he's 13, but 13, 14, 12, it's all the same. I just remember it was back that team in '98. It just with Robert Smith and the threat of him being out of the backfield. And then
not only him, but you also had Leroy Horde.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you need 3 yards, I'll get you 3 yards. You need 4 yards, I'll get you 3 yards.
Unless you're in Denver and you need 37, he gets you 52.
Well, Mo Williams was
Thanks,
in
Yogi.
98. Mo Williams was 2000, right?
Mo was there.
Was 98 the behind the back pass in Denver?
No, that was later. Mo was there. He was he wore 21 instead of 20, but Mo Williams was with the team that year. He was primarily special teams. But yeah, I mean, the team was a threat. Chuck Evans was a fullback, but he was a blocking back.
Yeah.
But you had a threat with either Smith or Ford to take it to distance. I mean, Leroy Horde had a couple of long runs against Dallas on Thanksgiving, and Robert could take it anytime. So,
Yeah. And he knew how to read a hole.
Yeah, he did. But he also has Stussy and McDaniel and Christie and Dixon and Stringer opening up holes for him. Not too many people were gonna,
Right.
get over. We're gonna overpower that line.
Well, Madison would struggle behind that line.
Madison would struggle on friggin' anything with
that Dallas Cowboy
of,
offensive
Finding
line.
the hole.
yeah, just finding it.
There's not enough hair around it.
Does Alexander Madison have it? Does he have any kids? Because that might be an issue altogether.
I'm glad you said it, Dave. I wasn't about to. But yeah, it's and I kind of you think back to the runners we had in the past,
yeah,
and then you bring it up to modern day, and the fact that we can't run the ball at all. I've never seen a Viking team that couldn't run the ball.
Right.
Even when we were throwing the ball with Tommy Kramer, we could still run the ball with Ted Brown and Ricky Young, and we would still get some runs.
Yeah.
But it's unbelievable that this team cannot run the ball. That's fundamental football right there. Running the ball is fundamental football.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And like a friend of mine told me, well, you got to remember, KOC was in LA with McVay. McVay doesn't like to run the ball either. So
JJ's still commenting. I thought you left, or I wouldn't have said that, JJ.
Yeah, no, right? Yeah.
Speaking of running the football and the problems with it, I don't know if you watched, but I think it was Luke Braun broke down Ty Chandler's runs. Ty Chandler, we all agree, has a good burst.
Yes.
And he can move. But he missed some wide open holes. And he bounced it outside instead of taking the hole, which makes you wonder if he's got the same vision problem that Alexander Madison has.
Akers was the best running back on the team.
We've got running backs that can't see their running back vision.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have it.
Yeah, and that's so unusual for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
Because we're going through a whole list of people that used to have.
And we got two
tons
great
of
ones
it.
coming up.
Yeah,
Mhm.
It's just, and you looked at, it was like just that style of football that even Ed Marinero knew where to run.
Yes.
It's like it was just kind of like fundamental football, and teams worked on it, running the football.
It makes you wonder if McBride has the same issue. But I don't think McBride does. You don't run for that many yards in college if you can't find the hole.
Yeah, but is it him or is it the coaching?
I mean, he's not the most fleet of foot. We know that, but
Well,
he wasn't coming out of college, and people knew that.
But here's the thing, though. Even if you're not fleet of foot, you can still get positive yards on the ground. You can still be a 1,000-yard runner. Yeah. Here's the thing: what are the Vikings doing that the running backs can't find the hole? What are they doing? What are they not doing?
Now,
where does it?
In a power gap system, they're given the hole. The primary hole is the A gap or whatever.
Yeah, usually.
However they want to annotate it, it's there.
Right.
Back in the day, mine was a numerical system, which comes from the system. Throwing system.
You had the 1 gap, 3 gap.
Yeah, and it was all 1 through 9, right? And you knew exactly where it was. But they also have options to cut back or to go outside, depending on how the play developed. Mm-hmm. but you knew the primary spot was this hole, whether
Yeah.
it be between the right tackle and the right guard, it was there. From there, if that hole was clogged, then you had specific reads to tell you to cut back inside or to go outside and bounce it out. We don't see that today. I don't see that with the present offense. I see it's all right, go this way, and that may be the general area you're supposed to go and find a hole.
That could
And they
be,
miss it every time.
now that you mention it, I don't see it with a lot of teams. That could be a league-wide thing with today's coaching.
Well, is it because of the wide zone? Is it rules in the wide zone that's calling, or the zone running, whether it be wide or mid, that have changed so much that it's changed the way the running backs are playing?
Mm-hmm.
Because back in our day, we didn't play zone. We played.
Well, you also got to remember now in the NFL, they're devaluing the running back.
Oh yeah, you got so many of them, and they're cheap.
They would rather put a Deebo Samuel in the backfield, and they know they can always line him up wide or whatever.
Or Cordero Patterson.
It's kind of like if you're a running back and that's all you do, you're probably going to be out of a job here soon in today's NFL.
Well, look at the Falcons. They drafted Bijan in the first round. They don't even use him.
Well, Bijan also can't hang on to the ball when he's supposed to.
He's got.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying.
Trust me. His name is. I've heard his name as Bastard Johnson for the last 3 weeks because he can't hang on to the football. It's like it's not Bijan anymore. It's blowjob or whatever the hell she calls him. But yeah, he can't hang on to the ball. That's his problem. So that's why they put Algier in.
They had the same problem in college.
Yeah, and here's another thing too. This all comes to coaching. There's got to be, when you get to this level of football, there's got to be a coach that's going to sit there and work with this guy and to see what he's doing wrong and correct it, so he doesn't keep doing the same mistake in the pros.
Right, because there's ways to learn to hold on to the football.
Right.
When we get to the number one running back on this list, which we probably all agree is Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
Adrian Peterson came in, and Adrian Peterson liked to carry the ball like a loaf of bread, like he was at Oklahoma. Right? And that caused problems. It took a long time to teach Adrian Peterson to not only tuck it, right? There was back in our day when you tucked it side and it was along your rib cage, but to tuck it and then hold it up here and learn to run. And it's to cover that up, and then once you got hit, to throw that second arm across the top so you didn't lose it.
You know what, Dave? When you brought that up, the last two guys on our list, same problem, because Chuck Foreman even admitted it himself. He would carry the football out there like he was Earl the Pearl Monroe, the basketball player. So you would see him making these moves, but he's got that ball way out here.
And that's the way they used to carry it back in the day. It was, they could run faster that way. Right. And they could move. And defenders weren't coached up as much as to not only tackle, but tackle and
go
punch
after the ball. Now they go after the ball before they even tackle.
Going after the ball.
Yeah, they're going after the ball before they even tackle nowadays.
So Foreman was 93 games, 5,800 yards.
Good night, Gary.
Good night, Gary.
Good night, Gary. 52 rushing yards, 336 catches, 3,000 yards, receiving yards. So 23 receiving touchdowns, 2 Pro Bowl, 1 first-team all selection. Before guys like Marshall Faulk.
How many Pro Bowls?
5 Pro Bowl, 1 first-team All-Pro.
Okay.
Before guys like Marshall Faulk and Danley and Thomason came along, the early part of the 21st century was the elite mixture of running and catching out of the backfield. Chuck Foreman was viewed as the most versatile running backs in NFL history. He entered the league in 73, first-round draft pick. And unlike some of the other running backs on the list, he made an impact for the Vikings very quickly. Foreman ended his rookie season with 1,163 yards from scrimmage and 6 total touchdowns, which resulted in his first career Pro Bowl.
And he missed a lot of time with injuries that year, too.
Yeah, during his next 4 years, he scored a total of 60 touchdowns and averaged 1,500 yards from scrimmage per season. That's hard to do even today.
Well, and when he played at that time, there were two dominant running backs in the NFL. The ones that everybody talked about. One was O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
The other one was Chuck Foreman.
Right.
Even with Franco and Zonka and Lydell Mitchell.
Yeah.
Or Sweetness was playing back then.
Sweetness came in 76 and got hit, and he just took that second year. He was just electric.
I got a question for you. Gale Sayers is in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say Chuck Foreman had a better career?
Yes.
Yes.
So why isn't he in the Hall of Fame?
He played for the Vikings, and he never won a Super Bowl.
And he doesn't have the story Gale Sayers
doesn't have the story Gale Sayers has. He doesn't have this. He could be in there, right? Floyd Little's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And they both had they both had 3.9 yards per carry, I think, their whole career. What people don't understand is, and this is just a new generation of voting, they don't understand that when Chuck came into the league, the Vikings put Jerry Burns and Bud Grant lined up Chuck everywhere on that field to create a weakness, to create a problem for people covering any of the Vikings. And back then, usually the one covering Chuck was a linebacker. Case in point, Isaiah Robertson. Well, guess who's going to win that matchup?
Yeah.
And the nickel defense, teams started using the nickel because they started putting an actual DB on Chuck Foreman because he was such an excellent receiver. He's actually a damn good receiver. He was our third wide receiver more times than not. Fran never had to throw the deep pass that much, but the nickel and dime, the short pass, the A and B circle, as Paul Harning used to call it, worked perfectly for the Vikings. That's why when you played for Bud and Jerry Burns, you had to catch. Dave Osborne could catch. Bill Brown could catch. Oscar Reed could catch. Clint Jones, even Ed Marinero. You brought them in and they could catch. Brett McClanahan, great blocker, could also catch. But with Chuck, he was just on another level. It was when they got him on the field and they found out what he could do, that opened up that offense, and that helped Fran Tarkenton quite a bit.
So Chuck Foreman had 52 career fumbles.
And not on, I remember them. I remember a lot of them.
Well, just so you know, this is how bad Dante Culpepper was. Dante Culpepper had 81. So
and Dante has small hands.
Yeah. We say Peterson fumbled a lot, but he only had 39.
And we considered it a lot. And they fumbled a lot more before then.
Yeah.
The whole ball security thing is
but here's the thing though. Peterson in 2009 fumbled 14 times. That was like the most in the NFL.
And three times in the championship game?
Yeah, down at the goal line.
Yeah. Robert Smith only had 9, by the way.
Yeah.
Robert, he was pretty reliable holding the ball.
Yeah.
But I mean, and it was a way that Chuck ran with the ball because, like we said, he kind of carried it out there.
But you can see Burnsy with the beginning of what became the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
He invented it, and it's that little circle.
Yeah.
I've got to have everybody be able to catch a pass.
Anybody that's eligible is going to be able to catch.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it with like I said, he did it with Brown and Osborne. Osborne was a very good receiver out of the backfield. Screen passes worked all the time.
Wait, did they throw tight end screens back then?
You know what? Here's the thing: we had John Beasley and Stu Voigt, and they didn't catch a lot of passes.
No, they were blockers.
They were blockers.
That occasionally could catch a pass. That's the position of tight end back then.
Kleinsasser didn't catch very many either.
Well, he also played fullback. He came into the league where they just stopped giving the ball to the fullback.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's the thing with Kleinsasser. He did start at tight end in 99 against the Bears. He fumbled twice, and one of them led to a touchdown. So that kind of put him in the doghouse early in the year.
Right.
And
now
then
he was a great catching tight end at UND.
Right.
I watched him.
Right.
But he did have a problem with dropping the football.
Right.
And then he developed, he got broad and big. And
well, then he moved into fullback, and he fit right in.
That dude is huge in person.
Yeah.
He's ginormous. He's like Paul Bunyan in Living Flesh. That's
Yeah,
how
yeah.
big he is.
Yeah, Kleinsasser has not missed any meals in his lifetime. Let's put it that way.
But he became your third tackle,
Yeah.
Yeah.
offensive tackle, is how big and how good he was.
Yeah.
At that.
Yep.
And he could run the ball out of the backfield, out of the fullback position. He could play H-back. He could play just about anywhere. And if he had the ball and you were running toward him, unless you were a defensive lineman, you were scared shitless.
One of the reasons
made business decisions.
well, one of the reasons we had such great running game up until, well, even during Peterson's time there, Jimmy Kleinsasser was leading the way. Jimmy Kleinsasser was hitting the hole.
Right.
He was the first one through the hole, so he was going to clear it out. I mean, and he was good at it. One year we had like 3 backs. We had Moore, we had Ontario Smith, and I think Michael Bennett, but he was often injured. But those guys all gained like over 500 yards, thanks in part to Jimmy Kleinsasser.
Who was the size of a small offensive tackle.
Yeah.
But then
and could run.
And could run.
So the Vikings, that's another show we could do is fullbacks, because they had Tony Richardson. They had Lorenzo Neal. I think Lorenzo Neal wasn't he the lead back for the Peterson game?
No, the lead back was Richardson.
It was Richardson. Yeah, I know Lorenzo Neal was on the field for some special.
By the way, I think a lot of people don't realize this. We almost had LaDainian Tomlinson.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to sign with the team. I don't know. Do you know why he didn't, Dave?
Mm-hmm.
It was between us and the Jets.
Yeah, it was between us and the Jets. As a matter of fact, and I only found this out because he was doing a radio interview. And somebody asked him, so what jerseys do you have framed in your living room? He was like, well, of course, I got my college jersey, Chargers jersey, and my Vikings jersey. And I'm like, whoa, what? I'm like, wait, Vikings jersey? But I remember when he was a free agent before he went to the Jets.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That there was a rumbling that he had talked to the Vikings.
He
wasn't the only one.
There was one. I can't remember exactly. I don't know if it was a quarterback or if it was a coach or it was something that the Vikings had that he did not like.
Probably Childress.
The reason why he signed with the Jets.
Probably Childress. It was probably Childress. And the other one, I talked about it earlier, John Riggins.
Yeah.
Yes.
We had just traded Chuck to the Patriots. And Riggins retired. He sat a year out. And Bud brought him up here, talked to him, get him dinner and everything, but he ended up going back to Washington with Gibbs. It worked out for him too.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he was we tried to get Riggins. So I'm trying to think, did we try to get any other? Well, we got Walker. Let's not talk about that one. Yeah, that's about
done that
it.
with quarterbacks too. So.
Yeah,
but that's a different episode.
Mm-hmm. So number one is most likely AP.
123 games. Yeah, he's number one on all the lists. 123 games, 116 starts, 11,747 yards, 4.9 yards per carry, 97 touchdowns, 241 catches, which is surprising. I thought it'd be a lot lower than that.
I did too.
1,900. He averaged 8.1 yards per catch. He had 1,900 yards.
Wow.
5 receiving touchdowns, 7 Pro Bowls, 4 first-team All-Pro selections in the 2012 MVP award. So when you're expected, Adrian Peterson was without a doubt the greatest running back to ever suit up for the Vikings. There was no debate to be had. Like Chuck Foreman, Peterson didn't waste any time when he arrived to Minnesota as he rushed for 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns during his first season. Yeah. His outstanding performance in 2007 resulted with him being the season's offensive rookie of the year. All Peterson did during his second year was lead the Vikings in rushing with 1,700 yards in his first All-Pro selection. His best season was obviously 2012 when he rushed for 2,000 yards and led the Vikings to the playoffs.
After coming off of knee surgery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And he had other injuries too. I mean, he had that groin injury that was really bad. I ain't even going to mention how bad it was. That's how bad it was. He was a bruising back in an era where teams weren't running the ball. he would have been perfect for old school football.
Yeah, he was. I say a lot. He's the last of the old school running backs.
Yeah.
Because he loved to run through you.
Yeah.
And there's so many times you could see some of his highlight runs where he would duck his shoulder and just run.
He was going to take you out. He was going to take you out. Yeah. It was kind of compared to now. And this is, we're only talking, what, 10 years ago?
Right. And we used to scream, no, avoid that hit. Don't step out of bounds. Don't go back in bounds. And he would, no, he wanted to get
and not
every
only,
single yard.
and we said that because not only his injury history, his fumbling issues, because
it would happen when he was going for those extra few yards.
Yes. It's kind of like it happened in a playoff game with Seattle. He was trying to do that and he fumbled, and it cost us 3 points, I believe. But yeah, I mean, he's to me, he's number 2. I got Foreman number 1 because Chuck could do it all.
Right. But total volume, to me, it's AP.
Total volume is AP. Total pure running is AP, but for the complete package, it's Chuck.
Now, and he had I think it's still the record, the single game record. But 297 296 against San Diego. That was a wonderful game. And
he did it on 30 carries.
Yeah.
Yeah, because every third carry was like a 40-yard run.
And Bollinger was a quarterback.
Who?
He was
Bollinger came in because
that's right, Brooks.
T-Jack got hurt again.
He was
hey, Northfield.
Bollinger was 7 of 10 for 95 yards, but he had a touchdown.
Yeah, he did throw for a touchdown. I forget who caught it.
Rice.
Oh, Sidney Rice.
Sidney Rice, yeah. So the Vikings had 528 yards that day. And, so it was pretty impressive that he only did it on 30 carries. They won that game 35-17. If you remember at halftime, the game was close.
We were losing at halftime because Longwell missed that field goal.
Yeah.
And I forget who returned it.
Oh, the kicker missing a field goal for the
Minnesota. And Andrews Rogers Cromartie, I think what was his first name?
Cromartie is the one that returned to like 108 yards.
109 yards, like the longest kick return.
Yeah, the longest kick return of a miss. It was short.
It was like a 58-yarder or 59-yarder or something like that.
Yeah, it was out of Longwell's range, put it that way.
Yeah, it was out of Longwell's range. But he like I said, only on 30 carries. So that was Chester Taylor also played in that game. He had one fumble. Tavares Jackson was 6-12, so they only threw the ball 22 times.
Yeah, and I think Tavares threw like an interception, which
the biggest thing
was a snack. But
the biggest thing in that game was Castillo for the
Luis Castillo
for the nose tackle
for the Chargers.
Got hurt right going into halftime.
Yeah, and they attacked it.
That's when Peterson got all the yards because I don't think he had that much at halftime.
Castillo got hurt, and then all of a sudden, what's his name was their best linebacker, Sean Merriman, disappeared.
Yeah,
he was out there, but he wasn't out there. He wasn't making plays.
Yeah, so it was 9.9 yards a carry. He had his long was 64 yards. Yeah, so I mean, it's still the record, 296. But like I said, we thought he had a lot of fumbles, but I guess you consider that a lot of fumbles nowadays. But when you look at the totality of it,
it wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad.
PFR has as long as 82 yards. And I would have to look at what game that was.
The Packers in 2012 in Lambeau. We actually had the lead in that game until Ponder threw an ill-advised pass in the end zone. It was picked off, and we ended up losing.
The only good thing about Ponder was his taste in women.
You better watch what you say because Samantha Ponder is going to block you on X.
I just gave her a compliment.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking to Tony.
I didn't say anything about her.
No, you know how many Vikings fans she blocked when they were killing her husband?
Uh-huh.
Did she watch her husband play?
It don't matter. She
was protecting him, Tony.
Yeah. she was doing Tony
You would
Tucker.
want your
Stand by
spouse to
your
do
man.
the same thing.
I'd want my
My wife-
spouse. I'd
my
want my
wife-
spouse to be brutally honest, which is
My
why
wife
I'm
would be like,
which is
"Baby,
why I'm divorced.
My wife would be like, "Baby, I love you, but goddamn, you sucked."
Yes, it's like, honey, was I good or was I bad? Oh, you were terrible.
Yeah, you were terrible. You're
Okay,
terrible.
You
I'll
at
tell you,
least the
terrible.
last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry, but I've got 2 shows I got to turn around tonight.
Oh no,
Yet. I may
yeah, we're
wait till
pretty much-
tomorrow.
We're
Yeah,
pretty.
no, we're
We
pretty
made
much-
it to the. We made it to the list. We did the list. We
Yeah.
we didn't mention like the Ed Marineros and guys like that. Marinero was actually pretty decent when
He was.
Yeah,
He was
And
actually
they're
very
great
good.
memories from back in the early 70s, the Super Bowl
Yeah.
against the Dolphins, etc.
Yeah. So we,
Yeah.
and like we said, we've got this history of running backs.
we both love Tony and I both love Alfred Anderson.
Yeah, I did like
Yeah.
Alfred Anderson. I liked Alan Rice. I
Yeah,
did. I liked them both.
Yeah.
Both Baylor boys.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I like Jarek McKinnon when he was there.
Jarek was good.
Mhm.
Jarek was good. Mo Williams. Scotty Graham.
Yes, there's
Yeah.
another name.
Scotty Graham. So we've had, and they may
DJ
not have been
Dozier.
those DJ Dope. Well, DJ.
Those are
Yeah, we don't talk about him after 1987.
He was a better
L
vet.
Train, Latavius Murray.
Latavius
backup.
Murray.
Yeah,
Latavius Murray. Milwaldy
Toby
Moore.
Gerhardt,
The Wizinator.
Mhm.
Ontario. Yeah,
Heel of the draft, the sod, the original sod.
Yep. And Toby Gerhardt, and he couldn't fumble in college, and he couldn't hang on to the ball in the pros. But yeah, we've had such a great history of running backs. There's a lot to this team, a lot of positions and players to cover.
What was his name? Barry Ward.
Oh, what's the word?
No, yeah, the guy, he was teammates with Christian Okoye.
Yeah, he was in Kansas City.
Here's somebody else too, Roger Craig. And the thing,
Yes.
here's the thing about Roger Craig, real quick. He's the only player in NFL history, I believe. I think I read this right, who never missed a playoff in every year that he played.
No, he didn't, because he went to the 2 years he was here. He went to the playoffs.
And every
No,
year
wait a minute. He spent time with the Raiders. They didn't make the playoffs.
I don't know. I don't know if it was.
Are
That's
you
what I
sure?
said when I looked it up.
I think he played with the Raiders and missed the playoffs. We got him in 80. We got him in 92.
Yeah.
And I think he was with the Raiders in 90. Him and Ronnie Lott both went to the Raiders.
Oh, Ronnie Lott going to the Raiders. Oh.
If they made it in 91, they were a wild card. Because I'm trying to think who won that division in 91. I think the Chiefs did.
Was that when they had Montana?
No, they had
Craig?
yes.
Or
Dave Craig.
DeBerg?
I think they had DeBerg too. Yeah, I think they had DeBerg too.
He played San Francisco from 83 to 89,
And they made the playoffs.
90.
They made
Then he went
playoffs
to the
every year.
Raiders for a year, and then 2 years with us.
Did he make the playoffs with the Raiders?
They finished. I gotta look.
Because I want to say that's the year they had Tom Marinovich as a starter.
Oakland Raiders, where are you?
LA Raiders.
There you
I think
are.
they're
They were
LA.
9-7,
Wild
and
card.
they had a playoff spot.
Well, who'd they lose to?
Looking,
Well, 91, they probably went to Buffalo.
they went Kansas City Chiefs
Okay.
Oh, they beat
in the
LA.
wild card.
They lost to
Yeah.
the Chiefs. So yeah,
Yeah,
he
so
made the playoffs every
he
year.
made the playoffs every year of his career. Yeah,
Made the-
I thought I read
and-
that. Right. Yeah.
And he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because he should be.
Yeah.
Well, he
He's
was
one
one
of
of
the
the key cogs.
Best all-round type backs,
Yeah.
passing, running, the whole works.
Yep. He should be in the Hall of Fame. And he's played on those Niner teams. And he's not.
Yeah.
That's what I don't
And they won
it's-
Super Bowls.
And they won big
He won 3 of
ways
them.
too.
He won 3 of them, right? I think because he won with the 95
He won 3
team, so he
Super
won 3 of
Bowls.
them. Yeah.
Yep. He won 3. Matter of fact, he scored in 2 of them, I believe.
But I remember when he came to Minnesota, I was excited.
That was one of Denny's big signings.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of Denny wanted him here because Denny had him in San Francisco. And he helped with leadership, too, because he was a veteran.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Denny, for the most part, had a young team, but Denny had mixed in some quality veterans with the younger guys. And he stayed here a couple of years, and then he retired. But, yeah, he was another one.
So we have finally – so this is going to be a permanent time, 9 o'clock, 9:15, probably 9:15 more, so Yogi can get his show in before us. So it's going to be Wednesday nights. Like I said, drop your comments in the comment section. We can do a show.
Give us ideas. We're open ideas.
Yep.
I'm not I will not rehash the Love Boat. Okay, I will not rehash
That was
it.
a one-time thing.
If you did not see that,
All I'm going to say is like taking a walk through the orca fields.
yeah, you're walking through some kind of field.
But go back and watch that. It's on my page. It's on Yogi's page. So Tony, where can we find yourself, and what other shows do you do besides our post game show that we do?
I do the post game.
The
status of the NFC North.
That's Friday nights at 9. We're doing that this Friday.
And you will find me on In the Zone.
Right. And then you also do Tony Takes.
I will, and I post my Tony's Takes. They've been pretty positive lately, which for a lot of people is going to freak them out. But
It's shocking.
yeah, it's going to freak them out. I
almost fell off
I
my
like your
couch when
Tony's
he gave
takes,
Cousins.
and I've told you that, Tony.
Right.
I almost fell off my couch when he gave Cousins a compliment.
Do you know how painful that was? It's like pulling teeth.
Yeah. So that's Friday night, every 2 weeks, Friday night at 9, we do the status of the NFC North. We do the post game show. We're usually the late post game show, so it doesn't matter if it's Monday night or Sunday night. We do a post game show. The Tony Stakes. These are all on Yogi's channel because that's Tony's channel. Tony keeps Yogi's
I'm
channel
on Yogi's channel.
So Purple Rain 24/7. Mine is Skull TYA Catch 84. The links are in there. Make sure you subscribe. And then now we leave it to the master. Dave, where can we find you?
Oh, Vikings First and Skull is where I set my hat down, and we do videos at least 3 times a week on Vikings First and Skull YouTube page. We also have podcasts, and you'll find a lot of our work on podcasts that isn't on videos, and we do a bunch of fun stuff. Wednesday is my busiest day because I turn around, I generate Justin Days from Purple and Gold for Days. He does a podcast for the Vikings First and Skull Network. It goes out on Wednesday mornings. And then during Wednesday afternoon, I record the NFC North Roundup called Who Will Be King with all the NFC North affiliates from Fans First Sports Network, which also happens to be not only doing podcasts. Fans First Sports Network has a website and a written side, and we have our writers over there doing Vikings content on the written side. And then I do The Real Forno, which I'm sure most of your viewers have seen and partaken in.
That's a good show. I really like him. I like Tyler. He's really good. Tyler's
a hardworking young man compared to me and Tony and TYA, right? And he busts his ass, and he's learned a lot over the years. And
but you know what, Dave? Isn't he a little younger than us?
He could be our sons, Tony.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then I don't feel so bad.
But he grew up, like he said, reading nothing but football books. He's a football geek. He loves it, and he's turned it into a living. He does college football, and he does Vikings, and he makes a nice living at it, reporting on it. And we're lucky to have him because he has some good stuff. Then that's on Mondays and Wednesdays. On Saturdays, you get myself and Darren Campbell. We're the 2 old bloggers because we've been doing this for over 2 decades apiece, commenting publicly about your Minnesota Vikings. Darren did it with Grant's Tomb was one of his first blogs. And I'm trying to remember. Oh, Kick-Ass Blog was the other one. And he's quite knowledgeable. And we take the weekend show on Saturday during the season, Sunday in the off season. And it's a long form show where we're sort of like the Sunday news show where we'll take down 3 topics and we'll get deep into depth with it and have discussions. And we have discussions with those that are watching, and it's a blast. We have a good time. That and all our podcasts, and we have a blast, guys. It's an absolute blast. But Wednesday is my busiest because usually I get done with all those podcasts and I come here and I get a link. Hey, join us, Dave.
Well, I know you wanted to talk about that story, but so.
Yeah, once you're in here, you're stuck.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's great. The community is what counts.
Yes.
Right. I've bounced over from different operations, and there was Climbing the Pocket before, and now we're our own Vikings First and Skull. But it's all about the community. Everybody that watches, from Norsevius and Bob and Sarah and everybody else, right? And there's too many to mention. The lovely and beautiful Miss Mary Fisk is the matriarch of it all. But it's about the community, because we do this because of you. We do it because we love the Vikings, but we love talking with you and seeing you guys in the chat, and you just absolutely make our day.
Yeah, I look forward to this. I look forward to this every Wednesday.
Yeah, I came up with this idea because there was nothing else like it, and I'm glad I did. So,
yeah, there's nobody else talking about history. It's a great topic.
Yeah,
and like I said before, if you're going to understand the team now, you got to understand the past, and a lot of it's connected.
And you have to go through the pain.
Well, and we saw JJ Vikings on here, 13-year-old, and he's going to knock him dead here within 10 years. And if he learns this,
he's already set.
I was around when I was younger, because this is probably what I would have done my whole life. Because, like I said, I went to school for TV radio broadcasting. But on that note, so what do we say?
Skull
Vikings.
Skull Vikings, let's win this game. Skull Vikings, honoring the name. Go get that first down, then get a touchdown. Rock 'em, sock 'em, fight.